Welcome to the Seven Cups of Consciousness podcast with me, Aleya, and Elysia is joining me today. She is an amazing being. Her heart is calibrated for service, and she has served so many people in such deep and profound ways. She also has a podcast. She is a meditation guide, intuitive coach for many in the entrepreneur and the corporate world, as well as individuals. And I'm just going to hand it off to you to have you dive a little deeper into who you are, your background, and what you love to do.
Oh, thank you, darling. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here and to be in service on behalf of your mission too. And our missions are so aligned. And with everything that I do, it always comes back to intuition and mindfulness, which, as you know, are best friends, right?
Yes.
When we are so present, that's when we can truly hear that higher self, that consciousness, our guides, our angels, whatever it is that you feel that you are guided by. So that's a big part of my work and everything that I do. I'm first and foremost an intuitive, and I have just attracted so many creative people, primarily business owners, a lot of spiritual business owners, but
Interesting.
I love my entrepreneurs. I love most most people, and I love all animals, but people who are really ready to do something different in their life, a different way of being, even if it's not business related, those are who are usually looking for my help to remember who they are on the soul level, what their purpose is, what their dharma is, and how to have better relationships. And that always comes back to mindful communication, which is another fun thing that I like to talk about. So
So
it's
with the mindfulness, it's a bit of a buzzword these days, and
sure.
everybody has their own perspective on it. What can you kind of explain just to our listeners your approach around mindfulness, and that might give them a little bit of a deeper grasp?
100%. And you're right. It is a buzzword, just like gratitude. People start to take it for granted and they hear it, but then they stop listening, right?
Right.
So, mindfulness is the state of being present. It's acknowledging this moment right here, not getting lost in the past and not focusing on the future. And that doesn't mean that we don't set goals and have things we want to accomplish and have a great life. But in this moment, right here and right now, when you acknowledge, here I am safe, and I'm here to love and be loved, then you can truly be on a path to accomplish all those things you want to accomplish. And you can forgive any of those things that you're still looking at in the rearview mirror that tend to make you crash. So when I work with people in regards to mindfulness, it's about not rushing the steps of your life and truly doing them right, truly doing them with excellence. And I don't like to label, right or wrong. I think that depends on the person and what they're going through.
Right.
But when we say excellence, do something with excellence, it's the difference between, I said I love animals. So this might sound gross. We're already having fun. If my dog throws up on the floor and I go to clean it up, am I just grabbing a paper towel, picking it up, and throwing it away? That's rushing. Or am I doing it what I call right? Am I doing it with excellence? Wet the paper towel, wipe it down, spray it with a, organic animal friendly spray, pick it up, dry the floor, right? Check on the animal, like all those things. That's
Mm-hmm.
doing things with excellence. That's doing things with mindfulness. You actually accomplish more. And if it seems like you're doing more, you're making less mistakes.
Beautiful. And I hear the words like, how can I be gracious in this moment?
Mm.
Because when we're gracious, we're present, we're connected, we're in our heart center, we're not making the dog feel bad that it just
Yeah,
vomited because it doesn't feel good anyway.
little
It
baby.
doesn't need the double whammy. And so it's also, as you're talking, I'm watching the energy of it. It's helping coaching people in mastering being present. Because when they're present, then they're connected in with their essence, then they're connected in with their wisdom. Now they have the capacity to pull on that beauty within.
You're so right. And you do that so beautifully on this show. And it just feels so good. I was saying to you, and to let everyone know who's listening or watching, before we started, I said, I feel so safe and held in your space. And it's just who you are. And just to reflect and be a mirror back for you in regards to that graciousness and that grace, because you took the time for us to set an intention. Like, how can I do this with excellence?
Right.
And so it's those little things that change our pathway.
Mm-hmm.
right? Our physical pathway, our neural pathway, our energetic pathway to go,
Absolutely.
okay, now, right? I sat up, now I'm aligned, right?
Right.
And alignment is not a line. It's not a straight line, right? Alignment, it's circular. It's
Right. The
who are
spiral.
we? Right? Yeah, or
Yeah.
like a Mobius, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
100%.
Beautiful. So just curious, how did you come to this path that you're on now today? I know that there's been many, many moments in the past, but when did it really start to percolate into your awareness and put you onto a trajectory of cultivating self-awareness, being of service in every moment to yourself or others?
Well, the how much time do we have? The I think anytime we ask someone, how did you discover what it is you're supposed to do in this world, right? We have there's an encyclopedia that goes into it. That's why we have our Hall of Records, right? If you're into the Akashic. So on my first episode of the Brilliance Method, I go deeper into that. But what I feel guided to share now is when I was 24. I was acting full time in Hollywood. And being on the other side of the camera, in front of the camera, uh, puts a lot of pressure on people and on myself, right? Not to project, but a lot of pressure to look a certain way, to be a certain way, walking into castings, auditions. What do people think of me? Do they want me? I just want to be wanted. I just want to be loved, right? And so there's an essence of, I'm just going to call it desperation, not for other actors, but for me, right? To a certain degree. And desperation cancels manifestation. So I didn't book very much, even though I was a really good actor. And the things that I did book were wonderful and fulfilling. But those personality traits carried into my personal relationships, right? Really not valuing myself and choosing partners that did not appreciate me, took me for granted, were not kind. That is what I set the status quo at for my life.
Right.
And like I said, of course, that's a longer story. Does it go back to childhood? Does it go back to past lives? Ultimately, in October, end of September 2005, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 3 breast cancer in my right breast and in my lymph nodes. And my doctors had said, you're 24, it's probably just a cyst. A lot of women have, different types of boobs. Let's wait and see what happens. Everything in my whole being said no. Like, yes, I had cancer, but no, we cannot wait.
Mm.
This is a big deal. It's not
Mhm.
just a cyst.
Right.
So I took myself to an imaging center. I paid for it out of pocket. I was eventually reimbursed, but it turns out I had stage 3 cancer. And once I met with my oncologist, she said, we need to do surgery right away. You could be dead in a month. So had I listened to my doctor, I would not be here.
Right.
Right, honey?
Right.
So
Had
just
you
that,
listened to the authority figure and given your power away, you would
that,
have died.
that right there, what you just said,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So not only, of course, being in the midst of, okay, now I have breast cancer and how do I deal with that? And
Right.
I'm going to lose
Right.
my hair and I can't go on auditions and all the vanity, right?
Mhm.
But that piece of, no, honey, listening to your intuition saved your life. And when you reflect back to your entire life from being a little kid up to 24, it saved your life many times in different ways, in small ways. And it will continue to do so. Your intuition is one of your superpowers. And I believe we are all intuitive. It's just as real as a sense as anything else.
Yep.
Seeing, tasting, touching, right?
Yep.
Your audience knows. But when you rely on it just as much as you expect to taste food, right? I mean, given certain COVID side effects at certain times, we've learned not to take that for granted.
Right.
But that changed everything. That sent me completely on a mission to live better. Why did I get cancer? Right? That's a whole
Right.
nother
Yep.
what
Episode.
goes into that.
Yep.
Right. But truly,
Yeah.
then okay, I want to live mindfully. I will no longer devalue myself. I do everything with kindness and grace, and I'm not going to always put other people before me.
Right.
I matter, right?
You put yourself as number one. You commit to you first. Your number one priority before anyone, anything, even the mission.
There it is.
Mhm.
And that's hard because as women, we are such givers and we have a hard time receiving. So, I'm part of a collective and we are changing that paradigm.
Good.
And I want to give a shout out to one of my mentors, Andrea Quinn, who wrote a book about receiving for women. It starts off with receiving. It's called The Quintessentials. And that book, her workshop really, really helped me in 2008 to go, okay, where am I not accepting who I am? Where can I receive more? And receiving's not selfish.
Right.
And when you're doing it from a place of mindfulness and you could receive another present moment with yourself, everything gets easier. So really, I just want things to be easy. Like that's fair, right?
In flow, right? In alignment with your essence
Yeah.
and listening. And then it's 1,000 times easier, because I think that when we don't listen to our intuition, when we're not present, we get slammed. We get slammed to be present, and then we might even use pain and fear as a mechanism to slam us into the present moment. I personally prefer the inhale, because the more
Hmm.
sensitive we become, the more essential it is to listen to those tiny little nudges and whispers.
Right. Because when we don't listen, it just gets that much harder,
Absolutely.
that much
Louder.
more painful. Like it's just not fun. And I want a fun life. I want a fun life. I want an easy life. It's been hard enough. Let it be easy. Can we just commit to that? Let's let it be easy.
That's beautiful. A really intense wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
So after that, once you got through that physically, emotionally, then how did your life unfold?
Well, when you really start owning your shit,
Mm-hmm.
the universe shows up to go, are you sure?
Testing.
Right? In Buddhism, there's a term called sanzoshima, which in essence means breaking your karma. I've declared I no longer am going to do this, think this, want this, attract this. Are you sure? And it's a blessing
Mm-hmm.
because when those moments come back into your life that tempt you into your old behavior, when you're really doing the work, you don't even really notice them anymore.
Right.
You
There's
just
no craving for it.
right. It's like if someone brought you a menu and you don't like a certain thing, you just like, oh, you just kind of skip over that part, right?
Right.
So you
Right.
start to skip over the parts that don't work for you anymore to get back into that life of alignment and looking at, okay, well, how do I still honor myself as a creative,
Right.
as as an actor or an artist or whatever you want to call it? I'm like, well, the podcast is fulfilling that. And for many, many years, I was officiating weddings. I was like, this is so fun. Like, I just want to be with people. I want to, be in certain leadership roles of where I can inspire and motivate and just be in love, be with love. So I just made different choices that some people might think would be unconventional, scary, or risky, and sure they were to a certain degree, but you just have to do what makes you happy. Like, we don't know when the light switch is going to go out. So if not now, when? And I truly do live by that.
That's beautiful. And I think that so many of us cling to what is familiar, and then we perceive that it's supportive and it's external. And we are in a huge evolutionary leap right now. The planet is going through a quickening. Our outer world is changing. The planet is actually going, for the last 1,000 years, it's been in a stable, an unusual, stable environmental cycle.
Hmm.
We're coming out of this unusual 1,000-year period, and we're going back into the normal unstable weather patterns. So if we think about the last 1,000 years, it's actually allowed us to have civilization bloom and technology bloom in the way in which it has. But now we're going back into the normal, which
Mhm.
is the unstable. And how can we cultivate the stable inside ourselves when our outer world isn't stable financially, energetically, romantically, spiritually, religiously? Our beliefs are getting transformed as more light comes onto the planet and we go through this instability.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, people feel like they don't have freedom,
Right.
right? And so, just like everything, we have the right to have our perspective
Hmm.
and our choice, but that shift in perspective is the miracle.
Right.
So, where can we find that internal freedom?
Absolutely. You nailed it. Right. It's like, okay, when we're looking for it externally and you don't think you have it externally, oh, that means you want it more internally.
Okay, go for it. What does that
Yeah,
look like? What does that feel like? Let's get uncomfortable. Let's do the work.
definitely.
Yeah.
So with your work with lots of different companies, organizations like Gap, L'Oreal, YouTube, Google, Oprah, Disney, in all of that work that you did with those people, what do you feel was one of the key pieces that helped people make that shift, make that transformation inside themselves?
Well, ultimately, most people want to feel like they're not doing it alone.
Mm. Connection, collaboration.
Yep. Connection and collaboration. And the majority of the brands that you just shared, I did a lot of mindfulness work, mindfulness workshops, working specifically with the human resources department, mindfulness and recruiting, stress reduction. How do we increase productivity and also simultaneously reduce stress?
Right.
And from my creative background, being an actor turned producer director for a long period of time, I helped a lot of those brands create aligned content. And when I say aligned content, like with Oprah specifically, I think that was 2015, I wrote out her content strategy and looking at all the beautiful things that that company was doing and with the amazing team that I had and who I was working with and under, like people with good intentions. So how can I come and shine a light on everyone's intentions? The majority, even on the production side, which might not seem as interesting to your listeners, but the majority of the work that I did there, coincidentally enough, were educational videos, tutorials, makeovers for moms who had lost their identity, young women who came from underserved communities that wanted to figure out what they want to do and were then given resources through these different shows to go for their dreams, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting looking at how much time I spent in video production, but how it connects to every single thing that I do. But ultimately, just to come back to it, it's cultivating that community where nobody's doing this alone. We are not alone. Like I taught a class this morning and I pulled a card in front of the class and it was soul family,
Ah,
right?
that's sweet. Yes.
It's
And the
so
dolphins.
like this is who we're calling in. Like we're calling in our tribe. We must have met each other at some point along our journey, right? You and me. And maybe we're not in each other's immediate soul circle, but we've got, I think of it like keychains. You know, when you add a key ring to a key ring,
Right.
right? It's
Right.
like we're on each other's key rings. This is
Yeah.
here we are.
A few circles away, but we're connected.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's being present enough to feel that beautiful glimmer, that shake of familiarity
Mm-hmm.
in the connection, and then go, cool. What are we supposed to create together? What are we supposed to heal together? And then we do it.
Beautiful. And it's so interesting that you pulled the card of the soul family, because a lot of the times people come here into this world and they take a deep breath, they launch, and they forget. They forget on their exhale. And then when they pass, and they transition back over to the other side, they take their inhale again and remember. And so that's a huge gap between the remembering and the forgetting.
Yeah.
And when we do remember, when we use the mindfulness or our energetic fields or what I call the divine line to pull ourselves into that place of the essence, then we have the capacity to start feeling that vibration of our essence, which then starts to connect us with our soul family. But if we don't remember, then we can't call it in, we can't amplify it. So that consciousness amplifies the signal to call in the tribe.
And how do you know when someone's ready for that?
Well, I think I'm going to ask you that question. How do you know?
That's the
That's a great one.
yeah, so great, let's
I'll
play.
answer, but I want to hear yours first.
Yeah, absolutely. So we feel a pull, right? We talked about alignment earlier and I sat up a little bit more. We feel that pull from our consciousness going, hey, pay attention, right?
Right.
Look at this, notice this. I read a book when I was 19 years old called Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great book.
Yeah.
And he talks about deja vu in the book, which I thought was so interesting the way he explains it. Deja vu, according to this doctor who's done thousands of case studies of life between life regressions, says that when we are in the superconscious and we're being shown the movie of what our next life is going to look like, we're shown these specific moments
Right.
so that when we are here in human form, we get to go, oh, this feels familiar. because we have actually seen it before.
Right.
And the reason we have that deja vu is to get present, to drop in mindfully, pay attention. There's something going on right now that's going to shift the trajectory of your life, even in a teeny tiny way.
Right.
But I've found more often than not, when we're present enough for that feeling of deja vu, we open up our receptors for listening, and then
Mm.
we're ready to leap into what you described.
Very cool. And actually, I've in my own personal life done a ton of work energetically watching, scanning, referencing the deja vu because I have deja vus like a lot.
Oh, cool.
And every time I have a deja vu, I actually perceive that it's the crossroads. We're at a crossroads. And what is it that we're holding inside ourselves? And what could we amplify that feels supportive, that puts us on the path that supports us in an even greater way? So it's not making a decision with the mental body, it's making a choice internally of, and how could I amplify what supports me? And then when you do that during a deja vu, you actually can get a window, like a doorway opens, and you can see into the future. So I call them my like portal future, um, sort of like not a wink, but more like a peek at what is to potentially come.
Wow. I love I'm gonna write this down as a quote. I have lots of little fun quotes. You said, "How can I amplify what supports me?"
Yes.
Can we all just ask ourselves that question every morning when we get out of bed and have a better life?
And right now, whatever's going on in our lives, what is it inside you could amplify that would support you in all areas of your life? Maybe gentleness if people are being hard on you, strength if you need to embrace the day with courage, perseverance, whatever it might be. It's within
Yeah,
us.
it is. And we can be empowered to ask for help,
Yeah. That
right?
takes
Going,
courage, though.
it certainly does. It does take courage. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that would be the first step.
Yeah.
And just going back to remembering we don't have to do it by ourselves.
Mm-mm. And on that spin of like the courage, sometimes somebody will say, well, like, I don't have the courage, right? My life is in shambles and I don't have the courage to change it. And I don't have the courage to walk away from these things that are familiar but don't feel supportive anymore. And the precursor to cultivating courage is a lot of people will go through suffering, pain and suffering and agony and strife, fear of loss and actual loss to cultivate a certain level of strength inside. So, with all of the pain and the suffering that we've experienced, that actually does give us strength. Then, when we start valuing that strength more, now we're increasing the self love. That then creates a plume of courage. Now we have the courage to book a session with you.
Yeah, reach out and say, "Can I be on your show?"
Exactly. And on that, you were talking earlier before we started the podcast that you were super excited because some part of you is kind of percolating this reinvention of how you serve and express your creative current, your wisdom, your mastery. And I'd love to have you share that with our listeners.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so it's exciting, and it's a little bit it just feels fresh. It feels refreshed. I think that's the word. So for a very long time, I had been doing readings, intuitive readings, energy healings. I had an office set up in Los Angeles. People would come and get readings and healings, and it always turned into coaching conversations. And over the years, especially building up my wedding officiant business, which became like the number one in LA, and then a successful real estate portfolio, and then my production company, and then my coaching business took off. People were asking me, "How do you do it? How do you create successful businesses as an entrepreneur?" And so I felt guided to teach that, coach that, share that. And I still do. And I love those conversations. But I kind of put to bed specifically the intuitive readings. And I brought the intuition into my business coaching for my business clients to ask me to get a hit on something.
Right.
And in recent weeks, I'm feeling that pull, I'm feeling that alignment. And I'm like, gosh, every business guru out there tells you stop trading hours for dollars, have a group coaching program, create your courses. I've done all that. I have all that. It's great. It is still available and it is a good time and very helpful. I just want to do this right now. I just want to be in the room, right? Just we're in a room right now, you and me,
Yeah.
one on one. Let's tune in. How can I be helpful?
Beautiful.
So I am opening up my calendar. By the time this launches, I am ready. I am here. And it will be intuitive readings and focusing on life purpose, business, clarity, accountability. And I love talking about relationships and communication, especially because that communication piece has been such at the foundation of all the corporate work I've done.
Right.
It's usually where most of the problems happen when people aren't communicating with honesty and compassion. So,
And
yeah,
communication with themselves.
that.
Right. Because a lot of times people aren't even communicating clearly with their body, with their essence, what they're really wanting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so on that note, for years I used to make a joke that I didn't want to be because I saw too many people who I loved go broke or get sick just doing readings.
Mhm.
And that was all they did. And they didn't understand the business side of it. And I would always say, I don't want to be that psychic in the window with the neon sign. And then
There's a neon sign behind you.
I said this on one of my podcast episodes recently. And as I was in the edit and I heard myself say it and I saw my neon sign in the background, the irony was not lost on me. What you resist persists. Here we are. I am ready, universe. Bring me who needs me. Let's go.
That's so good. I
Yeah,
love
thank
it.
you.
Well, I also think that the light that's coming onto the planet right now is awakening our hearts in an even deeper way. And it's more like we have to do what our heart loves
Yeah.
as opposed to what our bank account might need or what our parents might need of us or our community or our family or our friends or our children. And so when we do take that leap with the courage, as you're like, okay, I'm going to let go of all of these outer things that I thought were important, but your priorities have evolved. And so then you're in this process of reinvention and who knows who comes through the door.
Right. And it can be a scary place to be if anyone is thinking about that, but it goes back to what we were saying earlier in the conversation about you just have to do what you feel inspired to do. And I believe the universe will conspire in your favor and bring you that abundance. And, I tell all my clients, especially business clients and entrepreneurs, you don't have to leap and go broke,
Right.
right? You can do it in a practical way. So one of the things that, my husband and I are talking about, and I still have my membership, which is growing and doing really well. And it's definitely leaned a lot more on the spiritual side as opposed to strictly business, which feels really good. But we have an investment portfolio. Like that doesn't define us.
Right.
Like I had to check in with my ego. Do we care? Do we care if we have multiple properties? No. There was a time that wasn't the answer, but no.
Mhm.
So great. Maybe I'll put one of them on the market while I build this.
Yeah.
It's
And
okay.
you're taking the power off of the outer and
Hmm.
bringing it into the inner of, okay, so if your heart is full and happy because of what you're doing, that's way more important than feeling the heavy, the tired, the bored.
100%. Right. And
Yeah.
I took that first leap when I launched my podcast because, as you know, podcasts can help introduce us to new audiences, but having a podcast doesn't necessarily fill your bank account.
No.
But I just felt motivated and inspired to teach and share for free. So
Yes.
here
Yeah.
we are. Like,
That's so good.
let's do it. All the greatest teachers, gurus, leaders, saints of the world, saints in history. Do you think any of them were like, well, I shouldn't do a sermon on the mound because nobody's paying to get in? Like, oh my gosh, that is not what happened. Thank goodness. Like, we
No,
can't. We can't.
we feel compelled to show up
Yeah. Yeah.
regardless. Well,
That's it.
thank you so much for being on the show. And I'd love to have you share with the audience how they can find you, what you're launching in the next month or two, or 3 or 6.
Thank you, love. Well, ElysiaSkye.com. There's an E at the end of Sky, so it's ELYSIASKYE.com. That is where to find all of my things, including the podcast, to book with me one-on-one, or to look at the Emerald Collective, which is my coaching container. I call it the Emerald Collective because it truly comes from the heart chakra. So I love that. I love imagining that beautiful bright green light in the center of your chest, just radiating so big and bright and beautiful front and back, left and right. So we lead all of our calls from the heart. So if you're
Beautiful.
ready to drop in from a place of love and create your life, that's what I'm here to be of service for.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for holding the container, creating the container, and inviting those that feel called and ready to come in.
Thank you. And thank you for this beautiful space and for inviting me and trusting me.
It's an honor. Thank you, everyone.